to many part of our human services, our hospital and healthcare delivery system. So if you add it together in a composite, it's greater than education costs. And that is one we don't control. Because as Professor Murphy said, it is a dual role. The federal government gives the allocation, and that is very much up in the air right now. And I've employed our federal government, and I do believe that despite the nomination of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and some of his past sense of it, I truly do believe that he understands the important obligation that he has for healthcare delivery to everyone. And I do believe that he has a responsibility, that he understands that it's not just about his viewpoints. I have to believe that, because I don't agree with some of the viewpoints that he articulates. But that being said, I think it's an important part that we need to be conscious of. The Medicaid funding is critical. And in the state of Connecticut, one of the big pushes is to increase Medicaid reimbursement, which I actually fully support it, because the Medicaid reimbursement rates in Connecticut and throughout other parts of this country are woefully artificially low. So you have this potential juxtaposition of raising Medicaid reimbursement rates for our important service providers across the threshold, and then you've got uncertainty related to federal funding. It's a double whammy. So you don't hear a lot about it because, like I said, 70% pay the taxes. So you're not looking at utilizing Husky C for our seniors and these Medicaid programs for healthcare, right? But it is going to be a huge factor that a lot of people don't think about, because we talk about education, but you want to take questions in between?
Sure, absolutely.
In that access, we can take care of those who are not American citizens, because that's the right thing to do. But our track record in being able to put forward proper funds, proper services, proper access to Americans is insufficient. And for us now to stretch and say, let's make it available to everyone in a scarce pool of funds, for me, I had to make a decision. And for me, it is an important role that we have to represent citizens of this country. And if we have excess funds and a surplus, God bless. I want to help and empower everybody to succeed and get legal pathway. But the challenge is, we've gone into the world where if you don't support this, then you're ill-intentioned and bad blood. It's not that. It's.
Could you speak to the dollar amount? And I appreciate very much the importance of being able to provide health care. It's not unlike, it might seem harsh, but it's not unlike, us paying for the people who couldn't pay for their electricity. So we pay a public benefits charge on our utility bills. So who is paying for this, and how much is this policy decision that I understood it to be hundreds of millions of dollars in excess of our prior budget, our current budget, and what will the impact of that be expanding it to 26 years of age, unless that doesn't have a possibility of moving forward?
And I'll get those numbers. I know it is an additional cost, and in a challenge of budgetary pressures that I think we'll anticipate. I think it'll be a point of conversation. The second point I will also offer to you in regards to utility costs, one of the biggest issues is the public benefits. Well, I'll offer this to you, and I would love to get the analytical professorial context of energy cost and the public benefit on an economic basis. But the public benefit charges that people have endured since July last year that has skyrocketed is in part due to our fixed contract costs to renewable energy, nuclear in this case, and also the obligations to pay during COVID for non-payment. Now, you would have never known those to be 4 separate buckets of needs until it was 2 years ago, when on a bipartisan basis, we forced our utilities for greater transparency and bill delineation. So you have 4 buckets. One is energy purchases, energy generation, energy delivery, and then the fourth bucket is, quote, the public benefit. That's gotten most of the attention because of the obligation to pay for those who are unable to pay during COVID. The challenge I had to the governor on this is most states went for 18 months. The state of Connecticut, and I would challenge and argue with the governor on this, we went for over 3.5 years of non-collection. That bill came due, and as a result, the public benefit reflected that, and also our fixed contract with renewable energy and zero carbon emission of nuclear. That being said, the other three buckets are equally important in regards to your cost of energy. And they constitute a significant portion. And I think for me as a policymaker, the public benefit is an important part to break down the cost, okay? But the other three part is also something legislatively that we need to do a better job in implementing or enforcing a fairness basis. So the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority, PURA, manages the other three components. So for me, when I look at reducing energy cost, I think I want to put pressure on all four buckets of energy delivery because it is untenable. But there are many other factors in regards that Connecticut doesn't generate any power. None of the utilities do. We don't get natural gas pipeline because we don't have pipelines that need to come through from other states that won't allow it. We don't get hydropower because in Canada, which is the largest generator of hydropower, we can't run a pipeline through Vermont or New Hampshire. So we can't get that. Wind power, well, it seemed like a very noble idea, but the state peer controversy and mismanagement has created to that point about the public benefit to pay for those that don't pay their bill. I will share with you on this. Our checks and balances in governance is an example evident by this policy. The federal Supreme Court, United States Supreme Court, decided in a case many, many years before this that it is an acceptable form of the common good that for those that are unable to pay because of the energy delivery structure and the regulatory governance of providing sole energy and a quasi kind of management oligarchy, that the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, deemed that it was acceptable and appropriate that for those that cannot pay, that these utilities be made whole on that. So that decision has been made. My only question and challenge to the governor on this was, shouldn't we have done it at 18 months or 20 instead of nearly 3.5 to 4 years as a placing burden? But again, that will all run through till July and you'll see a normalization. But what you will not see change unless we make policy changes on that is the fact the other three buckets of delivery that are important. And I publicly stated that the public benefit does have some important role in regards to renewable energy, sustainability programs, energy efficiency. Some of that may be very, very good, but some of the programs become a hidden tax for what is not in the budget, and that we need to be able to vet them individually to vet whether they're appropriate or not. So again, after hearing all that, Professor Murray, I'd love to hear an academic perspective in regards to the economic policy of our high energy costs, because everybody, and on a socioeconomic basis, everybody is impacted by energy costs. And predominantly for those people, these economic situations of the nearly 40% that makes $45,000 or less, they don't differentiate in getting discounts. It becomes a significantly higher portion of their living standards because energy cost does not differentiate whether you are a millionaire or making $45,000 a year. So the impact is even more disproportionate.
Some of the bureaucracy and possibly some of the efficiencies that need to be made, but I don't think you could take an approach that is wholesale without counting the devastating impact. So in that case, I have spoken out against cuts to those programs, because for me, being a first-generation immigrant and my love of this country, to me, with this country and all the men and women in the military that fights and supports our rights and liberties, but also the American value system, that it is important for us to show that we are more than just dollars and cents. We are more than political partisanship. We have an important moral as well as a noble intention to be leaders in this world, to provide and lift others. So I've spoken out in regards to that. I have facilitated that individual to speak to our federal delegation, not only within Connecticut, but also to the Republican federal leadership to alert them to the consequences of that. Another area that I've spoken out has been in regards to the recent cutback to the indirect charges for medical research. Now, people need to understand the indirect charges are not directly to research, and it impacts our esteemed and exemplary medical research institutions such as Yale, UConn, Harvard, Stanford, Johns Hopkins. And indirect charges are supplemental charges that provide for lighting and supplies, soft, non-research related. Has there been some fluff and subcharges in that? Perhaps. But my commentary, and I just submitted the letter to our NIH director, as well as Speaker of the House, Johnson, as well as Senate Majority Leader John Thune. My statement has been that medical research is about innovation that saves lives. We have been an American exceptionalism in regards to medical innovation, research, and success, and that investment needs to be committed and continued, because not only are we looking at a worldwide competition for innovation and excellence, that if we make that short-term decision that impacts the brilliant talent that we have been able to build in this country, other countries will take that talent. And so, to me, those are money and funds and a commitment that needs to be continued. There are other aspects in regards to bureaucracy, and I think what I said publicly is, in the area of medical research, in the area of human rights, there is no dollars and cents. There's a higher principle of what American means. And I say that because for me, as an immigrant that looked to America when I was younger, America was not just the Statue of Liberty or a beacon of, the Wild West and John Wayne, but it was a beacon in which every individual had an opportunity to succeed. And that the American exceptionalism is important and critical to continuing our role in this world. So Nan, I appreciate you pointing that out, but I wanted to say to you, as you said to me, what can you as a Connecticut Republican do and say and stand up? Well, I have no problem standing up for what I believe is right, moral, and just. That being said, I think we need to understand that there are other policies that can be measured, that can change how we do business. I'll give you an example. I challenge the dual delivery system, and it's a system that's been a status quo. And goodness gracious, I wish we could make that change and implement so that our nonprofits and the people that need those services, the people on the verge of safety net, gets the care that they need despite budgetary pressures. And I wish some of that could happen, but I wanted to hopefully answer the question and concern that you had.
Just listening to your presentation, one of the things that it sounded, just from what you said, is that you pointed out all these innovative nonprofits who offer the opportunity to reduce redundancy within the government organizations. And yet I would bet money that most of these nonprofits are receiving federal funds in order to survive and do the job they do. I personally am not confident that that funding stream is going to be continued so that these organizations can provide the services that they do. And I think that although the idea is noble that we could turn to these nonprofits, if states like Connecticut isn't willing to use their emergency funds to keep these organizations alive, we're in trouble.
I think I alluded to that, but thank you for raising that point more clearly. I've said that. We're gonna have a budget crunch, and as I mentioned, it's not captured in the slide here, but that shortfall from the federal government is gonna end up in Connecticut's lap, and we're gonna have to find out where we fund it. And the governor, even though he has steadfastly maintained that he will maintain the fiscal guardrails, he's already partially kind of edged out of it. Two examples that he's edged out of it is we have what's called a volatility cap, that if you made revenue beyond a certain amount, it has to be put into the fund. That's a cap. Well, he has asserted in his budget that he will revise that. So in a way, he's eclipsing the fiscal guardrail commitment. Number two, I talked about the pre-K early education aspect. Well, he took that money out of the budget allocation and he put it into an endowment fund. So that is outside of the budget appropriation, but it's $40 million that he's put into that commitment. So if you were purely on a purity basis, he's breaking the cap by taking the money out of that spending. But to me, as I said earlier, that's an important part that I'd be willing to put the money and a commitment to. So, but you're right. That money's got to be coming from somewhere if the federal government stops. But you know what? Connecticut residents pay enough into the federal tax, and it is one of the important priorities and missions that we have. So I have no problem asking for the federal government to do just by the values and the principles of resident in our state. And to me, I said to you, Nan, it's not about a Democrat-Republican issue. It's about doing what is right to the people that I've been entrusted and privileged to represent on 28th District.